Hello and welcome to Scofie Sessions. I am your host, Scofie, and I'm so thrilled that you are here. If you are stumbling across this live stream on LinkedIn or YouTube and have no idea what you have stumbled upon, Scofie Sessions is my shameless excuse to hang out with friends, peers, subject matter experts, and people who I just find absolutely fascinating in the industry. And today's special guest is absolutely no exception. I'm going to introduce him in just a moment. If you're watching this back later, or if you have this on your calendar and you happen to have planned to be here, then you know that today's topic is specifically for nonprofits. So if you run a nonprofit, work for a nonprofit, work with nonprofits, and have a high interest in that space, you found your people today. And we're glad that you're here. The topic for today, raising revenue and fulfilling your mission, specifically from the vantage point of increasing donor engagement and also reducing costs. Our special guest today is none other than John Corcoran from Merritt Walsh Associates. And I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself in a little more detail in a minute. But John and I got connected through some peers, some mutual connections through a networking organization that we're both part of. And very grateful for that connection that was made, because when John and I talked, we instantly identified one particular area where we have a lot of overlap, and that's the nonprofit space. My exposure to the nonprofit space is as a representative of a nationwide network of providers that work particularly in the IT space, cybersecurity, compliance. That nationwide network works with tons of nonprofits, hundreds of nonprofits that my strategic partners work with every day. So I consider myself a student of the nonprofit space and somebody that comes along routinely to help nonprofits in a couple different unique ways. And we'll talk more about that later. That's really not the point of today. But then John shared with me how his experience has been, and he's going to tell his story a little bit, better than I certainly can. But we're glad that you're here with us today. John, thank you so much for joining us. Give our audience a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and why you said yes to hanging out with this goofball today.
No, thanks for having me, and anything but a goofball you are. I can tell you that I got into the nonprofit world without any intent. I was working for a hospital. I was in the executive suite. We were struggling with the foundation, raising money in the nonprofit portion of our healthcare system. They were firing the executive director, and the president came to me and said, "I'm at wit's end. Would you take over? You're good at sales and marketing. You like people. You care about people." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know anything about fundraising except selling a raffle ticket and working on a golf committee. It's got to be more than that." He said, "Well, of course it is." But he said, "Hire a consultant." So I hired a consultant, and that person and his team changed my life in the way that I thought about fundraising. I was able to take all the skills I learned in other areas and bring them all together in fundraising for nonprofit, for a mission, for a purpose, for an impact. And through it, I was wildly successful. They made me successful with the tricks that they taught me, the counsel that they gave me, the ability for me to bounce things off them. And I made a statement in 1999 that when I decided to go entrepreneurial again and maybe leave working for the hospital, if I did it, it would be in this business, and I would work as a competitor of his. No offense, but I wanted my own thing. And 15 years later, in 2014, I made the jump. I moved into it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I had plenty of experience with them, and that's how I set up, Merritt Walsh Associates, to be able to help nonprofits raise money that they didn't think they could raise from donors they didn't think they had or even could find. And so that's the premise that I start with. And then we just kind of check the boxes on what are the challenges, where's the hurt, how can we rescue, how can we overcome the challenges. And so it's been a great run, and I love coming on, impact meetings like this, where a group of people meet with a similar interest in wanting to come to an end and be able to share real life stories, real life successes, and things that you could literally leave this early if you wanted to, and actually impact your nonprofit with some of the things we're going to talk about today. So there's not a lot of fluff. If you're taking notes, make sure that your hand is well exercised.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your background, John, and some of the context of what you do today. Before we jump into today's topic in a little more detail, if you represent a nonprofit and you are with us here today, do us a favor, drop in the chat, in the comments, either the URL of your nonprofit, the name of your nonprofit, and we'd love to shout you out. We'd love to share with our community a little bit about who you are, the mission that you and your nonprofit are on. And if there's ways that we can support you or that our viewers can support you, don't be shy. Please drop that information in the chat. And I don't care if you're watching this recording back 6 months from now, we absolutely covet that and want to, promote you the ways that we can to our constituency. So say hi, say where you're from, and don't be shy. And if you have questions for John and I, we absolutely covet that engagement. Before we jump in, so we're 6 minutes into our time together. Before we go any further, I want you to think about what is one thing, if somebody stopped listening to this conversation right now, and they were just to walk away with one thing that they could go into their nonprofit today without spending a dime, without bringing on another vendor or partner, what is one piece of advice that you would give anyone running a nonprofit today that would have the most impact on building revenue in 2025?
Well, that's the easiest question that anybody could ask me about what I do. And it's probably the biggest mistake that our hospital is making and the biggest mistake that most nonprofits are making when I speak with them. And that is, the answer is focus on major gifts. Focus on where the money is. There was an old commercial that said, if you're hungry, go where the food is. And if you're looking for money, go where the money is. And so we spend a lot of time on annual giving, looking for the $10 gifts and the monthly gifts. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to have that. Okay. There's nothing wrong with events. There's nothing wrong with, fundraising events. So there's community events and fundraising events. Those are great. We have to have them. But there's not enough time that nonprofits spend talking to major donors, major donor prospects, and telling them about the impact that we make in our organization and why they should redirect their money to your nonprofit.
Right.
The problem is, by going to people who are less major, they're making a decision between going on vacation or giving you money. Right. The people at the major gift level, they're going to give the money away no matter what. They're not afraid of you asking for money.
Right.
Okay. So that would be my thing, is to redirect. You don't need any more people. You could probably get rid of somebody if you had 3 people in events and you started doing real well on major gifts. You'd be like, we don't really need 3 people on events anymore. So, but
why would you say that is, John? So in your experience at the nonprofit that you worked for, was it just a lack of initiative, or maybe knowing who those major donors were or how to identify a major donor? Why do you think that's such a problem for a lot of nonprofits and folks who run them?
Well, in doing feasibility studies and confidential studies for my clients over time, and being involved with nonprofits for the past 25 years. I've only been in this firm for 10. Going on 11, but I've been in this for over 25 years, almost 30. And so it's fear. So my skill set is sales, marketing. I like people. My personality is outgoing. I'm not intimidated by people that make 50 times what I make, or 100 times what I make, or twice what I make. They're just like me in so many other ways, and they're blessed with money and I'm blessed with other things. So I'm not afraid to do that. And you can learn that. You don't have to be that. I've seen people train and be intentional, and they're as introverted as you can get. And yet they can come alive like an actor on the stage and be able to approach someone and talk to them about your mission. And a lot of that comes to talking to people and say, do you know anybody that really needs to hear about our mission? A homeless shelter, a private school, a mental health organization. It doesn't matter what it is. Is there anybody who needs to hear about this? Yes, I know somebody. well, can we set up a meeting and put something together? So there's those things that can be done. And then once you get in front of them, then the stage is yours, and you've got to make sure that you can get your impact message across so that they see a reason to continue the conversation with you.
I absolutely love that answer, John. Fear. And I think you're right. So I can't claim to have a ton of experience on the business development side of things specific to the nonprofit space, but my entire career has been built around picking up the phone and reaching out to somebody who I believe I could have an impact on. They just don't know it yet. And it's a skill that I myself had to learn. It's funny. I posted, encouraging people to attend this earlier this morning, and I called myself out as being an introvert, and it's absolutely true. Some people are surprised to hear me say that, but it's absolutely been a learned skill to be able to know how to confidently, in spite of fear in many cases, connect with someone that I believe is going to benefit from the engagement. And from a sales capacity, I can totally see how when you're raising funds for a nonprofit, that perception of the person who can bless you with the major gift is like, they must be here, and I must be there. But you said it yourself. They were already intending in most cases to give that money away anyway. They're expecting, in some cases, wanting you to reach out and connect. And you need to believe in yourself and your mission enough to realize that there is a value in you being part of that major donor's world. That's just me intuiting from what you've shared, John. What would you add to that or change?
Well, I think it's, let me make, one distinction, that the last time that I made a cold call was in 1992. Okay. So I learned from a coach that I hired, and he taught me how to never make a cold call again. And, I train my clients with that, but I'm going to tell you that the easiest way to do that is using your network and asking for someone to connect you. And then it's a warm call. So yes, you do have to pick up the phone, but I'm not sitting there with lists of millionaires and just smiling and dialing them, because I'm going to go nowhere. That's a waste of precious time, and can really eat up a lot of your day. But I've gone to people, as an example, I've gone to my board and I've said, give me names of people that are in the community that would like what we do and have the capacity. And I said, and I don't want you to introduce me to them. I don't want you to do anything. And I won't even mention your name. But if I don't know they exist, so then they're like, okay, I trust you. Okay, you have to be credible. So they did trust me, and it worked out. I hope they can trust you. And then they say, all right, I'll give you a name. Jonathan, just sold his business for $30 million, but you didn't hear it from me. So now I take all those names, and when I'm talking to people in the community, I say to them, hey, listen, I'm at a networking event. I'm at a Rotary Club. I'm at the Chamber of Commerce. I'm at wherever I am. Okay. And I'll pull the card out of my pocket, and I'll say, hey, do you know any of these people that, I'm trying to reach? And they'll be like, Jonathan, oh, I play pickleball with him, or we go surfing together, or whatever it is. Oh, I'll introduce you to him. They have no idea if Jonathan has money or not. They just know him as a good guy. And I tell them I want to meet with him. And then usually I go in and I have some sort of a document with me, a promotional piece. And I just want Jonathan's input on it. And, he's a businessman, he's successful or whatever. And I want to see if, I could just engage him and have a conversation. I'm not asking for money. And then the relationship starts. So that's how it goes. I never sit down and just smile and dial. Everybody, I can get people to come to me. And I tell the person that I showed the card to that I have this new infographic that I'm testing, or we have a new marketing piece that I'd like to talk to people in the community about. Do you think, they would want to do it? And I can tell you one psychological phenomenon, if you don't know it already, that everyone likes to give their advice, whether they're asked for it or not. Mm-hmm. And yet people are asked for less advice today than 30 years ago, because there's many reasons, but two big reasons are Google and AI. Yeah. So since we have AI is even better than Google, because you can get all kinds of things twisted and turned. It'll actually, write everything for you. In Google, we get the information. We still have to do a little bit of work. So people are not asking people for advice. You can just, Google it, call, go on AI, any AI platform. I do it myself. But when I've asked people for advice, it's like, clear my schedule.
That's right.
Let's come on. I'll buy you lunch. How can I help you with this infographic? I love giving my opinion.
That's right. So what you just described, there's several different layers to what you just described, but the first part of what you were kind of articulating there, there's a word for it that's been coined in recent past. We call it near bound. Everyone's familiar with quote unquote outbound or quote unquote inbound in the terms of supposed lead generation. But this idea of near bound is that the mind share of my future donor is already occupied by a trusted individual. And I am usually never more than 1 or 2 degrees away by being able to be brokered in nearby to that same mind share. So like a cold call is like brute forcing your way into the mind share of the donor. But by doing some due diligence on the front end, identifying first and foremost who has the relationship today, now you can get highly strategic and more importantly, highly relevant in how you connect with those individuals. So I absolutely love that approach. The second part of what you shared, people love to give advice. This is absolutely true. And people generally like to be helpful and they like to be known to be helpful. So when you come to someone from the vantage point of, hey, I've got this thing, I was wondering if you could give me some feedback, or if you were me, what would you do? Or how might you, Mr. or Miss prospective donor, et cetera, solve for X? This is a thing that I'm struggling with, and maybe you've figured that out. It's such an appealing way of brokering those first engagements with somebody because they're like, oh yeah, actually that is something. I may have a shred of advice for you, and take it or leave it, but maybe we should have a 30-minute call, or maybe you should let me take you to coffee, or whatever it might be. But I would go and say that number one, you got to identify who those individuals are that you need to start asking for that advice from. I could also see, just John, as a kind of like a clarification, I would imagine, John, you have to be sincere with that solicitation for advice. If you do it wrong, I could see it coming off very much as a manipulative tactic. You have to be sincere. So go at it from a perspective of, I actually do need some help. I actually could use and genuinely desire your input and advice here. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, it absolutely has. That goes without saying, and maybe I should have said it because I'm taking it for granted. 3 things have to happen for a relationship, whether it's a dating relationship, a partnership, a friendship, a business agreement, whatever it is. And the psychologists have told us it's credibility, rapport, and chemistry. So
That's
without
right.
credibility, there's no truth. So everything you say has to be the truth. Rapport is that you share things in common, and chemistry is that your behavior is compatible. So someone that is fidgety and up and down and all will probably not be able to relate in chemistry with somebody that's like really laid back and like only goes out on Saturdays. But if they have enough rapport, they both like the same sports teams, they both go to the same house of worship, they both graduated from the same university, they both have the same number of kids at the same age, they all go to the same school. Now you can overcome chemistry, but you're never going to be at 100%. But when you find that person that you have credibility with, chemistry and rapport, that's a lifelong relationship, okay? So I start out with telling my clients, if you're not talking to your prospects and your donors about your marketing pieces and you're just listening to the professionals, I say, get the professional designers. So I had a client, nationwide client, I won't name them. They had them come up with a great infographic. They paid a lot of money for the infographic. I took it out to donors and prospects and people in the community. And I said, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? 1-page infographic. You all know what it is, okay? And if you don't, you should look it up and do one. And I took it out. And my prospects, my board member, everybody was giving me advice about it. And as they did it, even some people who were donors, current donors, were like, I didn't know you did this. Well, it's because not everybody can know everything, but we put everything on 1 page. So to the credit of the staff of my client's staff and the professional agency, between the 2 of them, there isn't one thing I could have added to that infographic that this nonprofit did. And yet there were a lot of things on that infographic that most constituents did not know. They knew some of it, even most of it, but not all of it. And they all keyed in. And then it gave us a chance to say, oh, well, we can tell you more about that. Would you want to know about this? And at the bottom of it, it always says, this is what we're raising money for. So this is where we've been, this is where we are, and this is where we're going. And people will be like, well, I didn't know you needed a new van. My brother-in-law owns a dealership. He's not going to give you for free, but we could certainly, here, they take down his, whoa, I didn't look for that. It came to me. So everyone wants to buy and no one wants to be sold. So when I go out and just create a relationship with people, they will buy their way in by saying, I know somebody, or I would give you some money for that. If you're going to do that, I'll donate to that.
That's right. That's right.
It does work.
So your piece of advice, which we've started to go down that rabbit trail a lot farther than when we were started, which is great. Your initial piece of advice was focused on major gifts. All right. So let's say that the individual who's watching this back later, they take that advice and now they're going to start prioritizing, focusing on major gifts. You've laid out a few examples of how you might begin to do that. Do you have any other like highly tactical, tangible things that would help them fulfill that? So like you said, maybe you need to really solidify your marketing into one piece of collateral, like a marketing, like an infographic or something like that, as a talking point to get feedback on. What other like highly tactical, practical things could somebody watching this live stream back later go and implement tomorrow?
Okay. First one would be find someone of means, find your major donor. Even if you're not looking for major donors, most organizations that are surviving today as a nonprofit have a couple of people who are their big donors, whether they inherited them. Some of them may even be founders of the organization, and now they just sit on the board, or they retire from the board and they give money, but they're in there. What I found is asking them to host a mini event where the executive director of the organization can come and talk about the vision and mission to people who need to hear about it. So rather than doing it in a one-on-one, which could be a little threatening, this person would invite them to their country club. I've seen people invite them out on their boat and have like a little fishing thing and invite them to come. There's no ask, there's no envelopes. It's just about information sharing. This is what we do. Do you have any ideas? Gee, you didn't know anything about what we did. Was there anything that we said was confusing? So you're creating this relationship. So let's call it a house party. That's the easiest. You throw out some food. A lot of times the nonprofit could offer to pay for it. I usually like to ask the person who's doing it if they would like to host it. And most of them are like, I can cover the cost of this. Don't worry, because I want the better wine and I don't want to charge you for that. So this way they want to be the host. They go into host mode. And what happens is they invite some people, and then you say, would it be all right if we invited some people? So there might be some people on your list. It's like, what do I do with Mr. Davis? He's right on the edge. I don't know what to do. But if I invited him to somebody's house,
that's right,
to meet some new people and maybe get some network for his business. Most business owners will never turn down a network opportunity. So now you get these people together. The executive director gives no more than a 10-minute presentation. 5 is even better. But the side comments, the rest of the staff that's there to talk to the people is magic happens. And I've been doing that for 25 years and it works. I just did one, last week. I'm constantly doing them with my clients. You can do it. You don't need anybody. You don't need an event planner to do that. You could do it yourself.
I love that. I love that so much. So we are coming up on the end of our time here. Hard to believe. So we talked about finding donations in your backyard by focusing on major gifts. The second bullet point we had was building a revenue mindset. And I'd be curious, like, obviously, changing your focus to major gifts, I'm sure ties into that. What other ways can somebody who leads or is responsible for revenue at a nonprofit, what other ways can they start to like fine tune their mentality so that they've got more of a revenue mindset?
Well, I think the revenue mindset would be to think more about donor acquisition, or how can we increase our impact in the community? How can we engage with more people and worry about the revenue rather than sit around and say, how can we cut costs? We should always keep our costs in line. And I don't care if you're putting $1 million on the bottom line as a nonprofit, which you can do. As long as nobody takes it away, you're allowed to make money. There's nothing wrong. Nonprofit just means that no individual is profiting, but the nonprofit has to profit. There has to be more money at the end of the year than you spent, and there has to be more revenue than expenses. But they got to function. Right? Right. But they tend to have an expense mentality as opposed to a revenue mindset. Okay. And we need a revenue mindset, which is we should be thinking about raising money and finding more work so that we can hire more people, as opposed to, well, who can we cut so we can make our budget next month? Because that's a race to the bottom. Because as soon as you cut, then you have no room and no time to go out and generate you can't go to Rotary meetings and talk about the organization. You can't get on panels. You can't have mini events. You can't run your event. You can't have major gift meetings because you're putting out fires. And as a senior person in your organization, you should be out meeting with potential donors and helping them reach other donors and listen to their ideas. Some of them will run the event for you and do the whole thing. And you just have to sit back and talk about the organization that you love so much and make them love it too.
I absolutely love that. Yeah. I mean, revenue shouldn't be a dirty word in your nonprofit. And, obviously you are more than the sum total of the dollars and cents as an organization. You're more than the sum total of those dollars and cents. But in order to fulfill that mission, you've got to be able to feed it. You've got to be able to give it the oxygen that it needs to thrive. And so that mentality of revenue, I think, is absolutely critical. And if that's something that, man, you're like, man, I didn't get into this world necessarily to, lead a high functioning sales organization or, aggressively pursue dollars, that's okay. I don't think that's what John or I am saying. What we're saying is, if you really believe in what you're trying to do, your vision deserves the oxygen it needs to thrive. And it's going to start with leadership changing their mentality and how they approach donors. And, all of a sudden that fear you talked about earlier, John, it's a learned skill. So there may be some anxiety or discomfort as you learn this new skill. But if you truly have bought in with high conviction into your vision and mission, then all of a sudden you're going to be empowered with that new mindset that you are the one who has value to offer these people you're approaching and giving them opportunities to showcase and be part of something bigger than themselves. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
There's one thing that I wanted to say before we close out, and this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned in my third year doing this at the hospital, where I was the executive director of the foundation, and that's what I did. So just like most people, unless there's a board member on this call, if you're working in the organization, I was you, okay? And I was out asking for money, and again, being a salesperson, I had no problem. And I went out to a person, and he said to me, what you're presenting to me here, whether you know it or not, he said, is a lot of impact for the money you're asking me for. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm a retailer. He says, you're offering me for $100,000. You're going to put me in every ad as your gold sponsor, every 5K run, everything. I'm not interested in naming a building after me, but I'm interested in promotion. I spend millions on advertising. I'm a big supermarket. I want people to come to my store. He says, you offer me for $100,000 for a year. I can be on every ad that you do. He said, to me, that's like $500,000 when I did the math quick in my head, maybe more. I want 2 years. He says, I'm going to give you $200,000. He said, let me tell you what most of you people do. And he called me you people. I got a little defensive. He said, you asked me for $25,000 and you give me $5,000 worth of impact. I made my money on giving people something greater value than they were paying. I'm a merchant. I'm a stockbroker. I'm a builder. Whatever I did, I made my money on margin. Margin goes up. He said, how did I make the $25,000? If I did what most of you people do every day, I'd be out of money. No wonder you're always asking for money. So he said, make sure that you all get together and come up with a message, and that the impact on the community and the impact on the donor, that there's something in it for everybody, not just you collecting the money and keeping your job. Because he said, I'm not interested in that. I want to change the world. I'm putting this money into your hospital for cancer research. That's enough. Now you're giving me the bronze sponsor or gold sponsor for everything. Now you're talking, you care about me, not just about that. So everybody's got to win. Win, win, win. The donor, the impact, and your organization.
That's right. That's right. So we have about maybe 5-10 minutes most before we're going to be wrapping up here. And so I want to quickly transition to our final bullet for this conversation, leveraging IT to reduce costs. That one may seem like the odd duck out for the majority of this conversation, but if you are responsible for revenue at your nonprofit, I know for a fact that the money that comes in is precious, and how it goes out is of extreme importance to you. And every dollar you spend typically is highly scrutinized. That being said, you have to spend those dollars, and the way you spend those dollars has impact on your ability to fulfill your mission. There's some ways that you guys can kind of level set some things if you look under the hood and are honest with yourselves. So in my experience, I work with a lot of IT providers specifically, and these folks are all across the United States, and many of them work with nonprofits just like yours. And what we have found is when we come into a nonprofit, there are some technologically focused nonprofits, so that's for sure a thing. But the large majority of you all didn't go into your vision and mission to be a technology company, yet you need it and you find yourself so dependent on it. If you are a nonprofit and you use Microsoft, you may have seen in the recent news that Microsoft, in my personal opinion, did you all dirty and how they're treating their nonprofit licenses for you all now. And I know some of that's still being developed. And if you haven't heard about it, I'm sorry to be the one who's bearing that unfortunate news for you all. But you spend a lot of money on the tools and resources and technology and software and cloud services and equipment that you need to function. When was the last time that you did a sanity check on all of that? So it's two sides of the coin, revenue. It's the dollars coming in and it's the dollars going out. And I know these are both things that keep you up at night. So that's where I come in. I know John has a high level of experience coming in on the donor engagement side, particularly focusing on major gifts. So by the end of this call, I'm definitely going to make sure that you get John's contact information if you want to talk to him about how he partners with nonprofits to help them on the revenue generating side. I am on the other side of that equation, specifically from your vantage point, and can help you guys identify if there are ways that you can reduce your costs, be more efficient, be more productive, be more operationally mature from a technology standpoint. To be clear, I provide none of those services and I charge $0 for my opinions. But basically what I help you do is come alongside you and look under the hood and see if there is opportunity for improvement. And if there is, I've got partners that can potentially help you out. So that's my shameless plug, if you will. John, as we wrap up, final thoughts. And if there's a nonprofit watching and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
I mean, they can connect through my website. They can send an email or through the website. They can get the contact there. It's merrittwalshassociates.com. But it's I love it's not a hard sell. People either need my services or they don't. And there are many nonprofits that can do this without me or any other consultant. And there's some that need that. Smaller nonprofits have hired me as a fractional major gift officer. So they've liked what I said, but they're like, we're small. Who's going to be this major gift person going out and asking people? Well, I do it as a fractional person. So I enjoy doing it and I can do it. But this is not a shameless plug for IT, but the biggest stumbling block and why I haven't accepted going with clients is because their IT is, they have no information for me to use. Like, where are your people who came to events? I can run them through a well screen and see if they have any money. I don't need you to do that. But if I don't even know who, did you know who, well, it's on a paper somewhere. You mean you don't have some kind of IT to do that? And then, from a finance standpoint, how can people pay online? People don't want to write checks anymore. You all know that. And how easy is it IT wise? I've seen donors tell me, because they always confess to me because I'm in the business, right? It's just like the person who's a doctor. Every time you see them at a party, everybody's got a problem, right? They've got free advice from doc. Well, people tell me about their horror stories with nonprofits. Oh, I just stopped dealing with them. I go online, I can't. I'm pushing buttons, it's just not working. But when I go on this other one, I hit 2 buttons, and all of a sudden I get a thank you, and they take my money. It's so easy. So that's IT.
That's right.
And the other thing is without the data. So I've got clients that can tell me who gave last week, who gave last year, who's my biggest for the whole year, how much their last gift was, their biggest gift. And then they came to an event. They run up their events. This guy sponsored the table, brought these 9 people. This guy sponsored the table, brought these 9 people. I run those 9 people through. I find out some of them are multimillionaires, but no one's ever asked them. And there's only one reason why people will give, is because they're asked. And the more money people have, the more they need to be asked. Because if they went around giving their money to everybody that heard that they have money, they'd go out of their minds. So they want people to come and make a thoughtful ask with an impact in the community, that they can get a return on their investment for the money that they made. I'm putting it to good use.
That's right.
I used to put it to good use and pay 5 to get something for 10. Now I can give this organization, your organization, the money, and they can go out and make money from that, or feed people, or cure people. You know, there's an organization by me, 7 full-time psychiatrists being paid psychiatrist rates. Everyone that calls in gets free psychiatry and mental health, because the bazillionaire that started the foundation lost his brother to suicide. And he said, no one that calls this will ever commit suicide. And everything is done. He funds the whole thing, and they do all through major gifts. And when he tells the story to people, they write a check. He doesn't even have to ask for the money. That's different. That's making an impact. That's making an impact. So make sure that you make an impact, and the money will follow. But without the information, he's got IT, unbelievable IT. Without his IT, he couldn't run his organization, because they have to run it really efficiently with 7 psychiatrists. There's a lot of coordination, and it's all done through the platform. So I think, Jonathan, you're in my little world, you're like a travel agent. When my wife and I go away, we hire the travel agent. They plan an unbelievable trip, and I never have to pay the travel agent anything, because the travel agent gets paid from the vendors that they provide based on what I want. So if you want better IT, I can tell you Jonathan is the way to go, because it won't cost you anything. If he can't help you, all you maybe did is picked up some tips from him, but it won't cost you a dime.
That's right. That's right. Hey, this has been amazing, John. I'm so grateful for the time that you've shared with us. If you are watching this and you want to connect with John, you can go to merrittwalsh.com. If you're on LinkedIn, I dropped his website in the comments there. And if you would like somebody to give you a sanity check on the IT and technology side of the equation, you can go to findmyitpartner.com, or you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn, or however you can get a hold of me. I'm pretty responsive, and I'd love to be helpful however that I can. Hopefully you got some value out of this today. I'm about to end the stream. We're going to go to a title card with some information that you guys can use to follow us in other places. We're on YouTube and TikTok and X and really all of them that I try not to give too much attention to, but we're in those places. So if that is where you consume your media, we'd love to have you follow us there. And then stay tuned for our next one. We'll let you know when that is, when we have our next special guest. But John, appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day, everybody.